We are live. Good morning, everybody. Good morning where you are. I'm going to scoot my thingy over a little bit. Good. It's almost evening here in Albania. It's a beautiful day. The wind is just, the breezes are perfect, and I'm just feeling good today. Feeling really good. I made some banana bread earlier. I love banana bread, and I've been experimenting with different. I found a recipe that I really like, but just kind of like the toppings and or not toppings, but the fluff stuff. And I made a really good batch today, so I had a little bit of heaven on earth right before getting on here. So I'm quite pleased with the way that the day is going. And I woke up to quite a few alerts. We had like 7 solar flares over my night, which would have been your yesterday. And then just a few minutes ago, we got a couple more. So we are getting showered quite a bit. I am, as I mentioned, I'm starting to work on the a workshop where I'm gonna break down from when the light, or when scalar waves leave the sun, what happens, how does it hit us, what does it do to our consciousness, what does it do to our physical body. And I'm working on, I want to research a couple of things as well, just to make sure I'm fully understanding each part of it. But it's such a fascinating process, and I'm hoping that it'll help to really help you understand what's really happening when we get hit by these energies and these solar flares, because the amount that we're getting hit with is unprecedented. And as we know, we've been talking about on from the daily tune-ins to the peace talks, it's really having an effect on us, and it's an exciting effect. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what is really starting to bubble up in us now. But first, I want to read something that came up, and it's perfect timing. It came up in my spiritual studies. I've mentioned that I've gotten back into spiritual studies to finalize my ministerial path. And it's quite fascinating, because it feels like, I mean, it's not fascinating. I love this stuff. It's so synchronistic, because it feels like everything that I'm intuitively experiencing and then seeing in my own life show up, it just so happens that the lessons for that week tie in so perfectly. And it's just this path, the spiritual path, just when we just flow into it, when we surrender to it. It takes us so long sometimes to surrender, because we've never really allowed ourselves just to like go with the flow, which means where we are called, we are led. The ego has not allowed us really to do that. We haven't been taught to do that. And the more that I find myself letting go and surrendering and just saying, oh, this is where we're going, this is what I'm being called to do. Okay, I'll go. It makes no sense to me, and I'm really afraid. But the more that I do that, the more I see magic happening. The more I'm understanding the mystical path that is the spiritual way. And it's expanding me so quickly. And this last year and a half of really walking that pathway, I realized at how much I have grown. And I liked now to go back to where we were in the daily tune-ins when I started. And I would like to actually just kind of give you a little bit of background on the daily tune-in, because I'd like to share my own personal experience with you all, so that I keep saying this, but I want you to know, and whether you're new here or you've been with me for a little while on this YouTube channel, I want you to know that I'm walking this path with you. And I have experienced almost everything that I speak about. And if I haven't, and I'm experiencing something new, I try to be raw and vulnerable with that. But this time last year, we were about 7 or 8 months into the newness of just flowing with life. And um, from the moment we decided to let go of everything in Austin and get in the car with our boys and travel through Mexico, the last couple of months before we left was when one of my boys said, I just don't want to go. I don't want to do this. And I knew at that point that I had to let him go. I had to let him have his choice because, as you know, as a teenager, there was feedback that I had gotten of like, oh, you can't let him make an adult choice like that. And yet I knew, as someone who has just a broader perspective, I've never looked at life and parenting the same way as most people. This is how he learns. And from day one, I said, I'm going to let you choose, but you can always change your mind. If you decide that you want to catch up with us, that you want to come, you can always change your mind. You are not stuck to this. But you know what? He went on his way and he is so happy, y'all. And like, he has grown. And I had the most beautiful conversation with him yesterday, to the point where I was like, honey, I gotta go. My heart's about to explode. And I'm just so happy you're happy. And and then he kept saying, oh, something else I want to share with you. And then I'd be like, okay, like I really have to go. And he'd be like, and then something else. Like he didn't, I could tell like neither of us really wanted to end the conversation. And we really didn't have that relationship when I was in charge of like dragging him out of bed to get to school. And I realize now that the space, we talked about the space between was everything that we needed to adjust our relationship. So allowing him to make an adult decision of, was exactly what had to be done for him to grow confidence in himself and to understand his choices. And as hard as that was, it was devastating to me. So a a month after we got to Mexico, my other son, my younger son, said, I think I want to go, go live with my dad and kind of be normal. And again, gut wrenching, horrible. I let him have his choice, sent him back. And 2 weeks later, Bud and we'd been in Mexico then for about 5 months, and we met a gentleman who, in the water. We were like, Bud and I were in the water talking about life, and I, was processing a lot of grief. And we met a gentleman who invited us to Ukraine. And there's a lot to that, but at the end of it, he invited us to Ukraine. And Bud and I at that point were like, why not? Why not go? We have this opportunity. Whoever goes to Ukraine, like we didn't know anyone. I knew nothing about Ukraine. And it was an opportunity. We didn't have the boys. We could take a risk, and we decided to go. Now, to me, if you would have told me this story years ago, I'd have been like, oh, that's so great. That's everything I've ever wished for. Like somebody invites you, you just go. And yet, with where we were with the boys not being with us on this journey, as we flew to Ukraine and we landed, and what I didn't know at that point was it was then a 10-hour train ride from the airport to this guy's house in the mountains. We were pretty remote. And when we got there, we realized pretty quickly that he was not a man of his word. And I think he was a big talker to people in Mexico. And but I think he was surprised when we said we took him up on his offer. I don't think he expected us. So when we got to his place, Bud and I found out that we hadn't that we weren't in the right place, and yet we were in Ukraine, and we're like, we're here, let's just stay here and figure it out as we go. So this time last year, at the beginning of October, we were only in the mountains for two weeks, and then we moved to this little town, Mukachua, which is where the Daily Tune-In started. And this time last year, about a week prior, I was pretty depressed. I was in a really vulnerable state. I felt very disappointed with myself. I felt very afraid being that far from my kids. I felt irresponsible. I felt like I had taken a really big risk, and it didn't go the way that we had wanted it to go. And then we're in this country, and the language barrier was extremely hard there. People no people don't go on vacation to Ukraine really at this part of the Ukraine. So there was no English, and it was just Bud and I was pretty down. And at one point, Bud got on me, and he was like, what are you doing? You wanted time to work on your work. You're not doing anything. Now is the time to do it. Get yourself up and figure out something to do. And I knew he was right, but I was pissed at him because he was calling me on my shit, and at that same time, I all of a sudden was like, what do I need to do for myself? And I just kept hearing from within, you got to tune in. We're gonna help you. We're trying to help you. You're on your way. You have to tune in. So I thought, well, if I'm going to tune in every day, then I'll just do it on YouTube, and it'll be I was called to share. So literally exactly a year ago, I started the daily tune-ins because I was at such a low point, and it was like the saving grace because it held me accountable for in such a vulnerable state. It held me accountable to tune in for myself, and whatever came up for me, I shared on the daily tune in, and it just went up from there. I started to understand more. I processed so much darkness, so much sadness, so much anxiety, so much depression in that those few months in Ukraine. I had no idea there was like the war was coming up. There was like nothing in my exterior world in Ukraine showed us any evidence of that. And so I started getting like emails from the embassy saying should probably consider leaving. And then they just got more and more urgent. But I shared a lot of our journey on those daily tune-ins. But as I went back there today and it looked like, where was I? Like, what was the message yesterday or last year? It really started to dawn on me how much growth has happened in this past year. And it stemmed once again in my world from being crushed by life, just down to my knees. And if you are in a place where it just feels like, you can't breathe, you don't know which way is up, you don't know which way is down at this point, but you pretty much know that you're not sure you're going to survive it, you will. And if you just tune in, come to these peace talks, listen to the message, take it to your heart, and allow your heart to speak through you, you will find your way. You will find your way. You are being led. So you are being led, and that brings me back to my point of this message that I read in my spiritual studies, and I thought, oh man, this is like the coolest thing how this works. But here's what I'd like to share with you, and this is by the author Ralph M. Lewis, and he says, in practical living, illumination follows both intuition and idealism. Our intuition helps us form a series of steps to climb. Each step, in turn, is an ideal. Each ideal is more advanced and more satisfying to our higher psychic self. An ideal may start with health, with personal well being. Then it may advance to a consideration of the welfare of others, then service to society, and then gradually broaden with greater understanding. The idealism prepares the consciousness for illumination. And I thought, wow, because as I go through my days in between these peace talks, I start to kind of tune in to like what's the theme for the next one? Like what am I seeing in my own, and what am I experiencing, and what am I going to share on the next message? And what I want to share with you today are three ideals that have really become very much embedded in me from this journey, this spiritual journey, surrendering to it, allowing it. The illumination follows both intuition and idealism. When we met that guy in the water in Mexico, and he was giving us his whole spiel and all the things he could offer, and he wanted to do with us, and all the things. My intuition, my mind was like, you don't even know this guy, and you go halfway across the world. Like, that sounds like the dumbest thing, but my intuition just kept whispering, go, go. And I had built such a trust with my intuition at that point that although nothing made sense leaving the boys that far and listening to this dude that we had just met in the water, and we hung out a couple of times throughout our time until they left to go back to Ukraine. But the illumination that followed after we got to Ukraine and things fell apart, and then Bud and I kind of finally found where we settled down, and we were just talking about it the other day. And he's like, I really miss Ukraine. And I was like, isn't that funny? Because it was such a hard time emotionally. But the town that we ended up in was this beautiful small town. And where it led, the illumination of our path just kept revealing itself. And it started with just following an intuitive nudge, go. And when we ended up in Mukachua, just a few couple weeks into it, then, I think it was like the end of October of last year, we were walking around and we heard someone whispering or talking. We heard a conversation. It was in English. Like Bud and I turned around, like, where's it coming from? Let's go find them. And we ran over, like, you speak English. And the funny thing is, we found them speaking English because the rosebuds were still blooming, and the roses were so beautiful. And how many times do I talk about roses? That is the symbol for expanding consciousness. So intuitively, we were led to this town, and then the steps took place. We heard someone speaking English, and it just so happened that this, like, the spiritual symbol of the rose was what brought us together. And that these people ended up having a beautiful apartment right in the middle of town. And when we needed it, we were in between. There was a time where we had to move out of our place, and we didn't know where we were going. And they were like, just stay at our place. How long do you need? And they let us stay there for free. So this mystical meeting happened over a rose bush. And it ended up being then that her brother, the woman that we met, her brother, we were invited to their family dinners. And her brother, like, loves adventure and was like, I'll drive you to Albania, because we couldn't get out without, because we had the dog and flying and all the things. So we knew we needed to drive. Well, her brother ended up driving us down here. So we spent 30 hours in a car with him and his friend. We had the best time with them. And so over the course of these months, the one thing that kept leading us to the next step was the intuition that would then illuminate the next step. And it's become an ideal for us. The first ideal I want to share with you is vulnerability. I cannot tell you, I have one picture of Bud and I on the way to the airport in Mexico, and the car's all, it's got our bikes and the dog. Like, I was about to throw up, because I knew the reality of, we're going to get on a plane and go halfway across the world to a place I know nothing about, with a guy that we don't know, really where we're going. We had no idea. And yet the vulnerability of that was so extreme. And yet I cannot imagine who I would be if I did not allow myself to be that vulnerable. So being vulnerable right now, we are getting illumined by these solar energies. And what is happening is more and more ideas, more and more nudges, more and more of your consciousness is expanding. And it's expanding, it's taking you into places in mind and in spirit that you've never been before. And all of the sudden, what is coming up is one of the second ideal is opportunities. Something doesn't be, like this quote says, everything starts with the illumination of the illumination comes by following intuition and taking the step. We can all say, oh, I'm super intuitive, I can hear my spirit. But if you don't act on it, you're not. And I see so many people, I see clients, I see friends, quite frankly, trick themselves out of taking the step that they intuitively know they have to take because they're afraid to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is scary and it hurts only because the mind tells you all the reason why it's stupid. But the spirit is just saying, go, go. So the second ideal that happens when we follow the illumination, it becomes an ideal when we take action, and then we can sit there and be like, oh, I get that. An ideal becomes a way that we live. It becomes a part of our operating system. And I can tell you what now, like after being in Ukraine and starting to get the embassy emails, we had to figure out another place to go. The pandemic was still doing its thing. So we're like, where do we go from here that we don't have to deal with all of that? Because I'm telling you, there was plenty of places in the world that was like it didn't even exist. Albania was one. And if you would have told me about Albania, I mean, 6 months before, prior to coming here, I couldn't even tell you, really, honest to God, where it was. And yet I've now been here 8 months, and this place has, I mean, it's certainly dealt its challenges as well, but it has a sweet spot in my soul that I will always feel connected to this place. Always. It has changed my life, but I never would have logically chosen it because the mind didn't know about it. And if I didn't choose the vulnerability and I didn't choose the ideal of to embody the ideal of where you're led, where intuitively you go. The ideal now is you take advantage of an opportunity. The opportunity was Albania's free, like open. Come on. We're not doing all the stuff that everybody, we're like, it was open. And we came here and we have had this view for 8 months now. And I never thought in my entire life I would ever have a place that would have a view. And I've been able to watch the world and the environment change and teach me. It has taught me about like how the energy comes in, how it affects our skies and our clouds and the weather. It's just been a teacher for me. So the first two ideals, vulnerability and opportunity. The other one is our intuitive elementals. Okay. The elementals, the intuitive elementals is really, it kind of just hit on it, but using we have our intuition that guides us. It illuminates as our consciousness expands. It illuminates new parts of us. That is the more expanded parts of us. It's the new dimensional reality of us. And if we choose to be vulnerable and step into that dimensional reality, we are then learning to also use all parts of our environment, our reality. Our environment, the elements are an extension of our intuition. So bear with me here because it's going to be hard to put this into words. And I kind of talked about it on the last we're not doing daily tune-ins anymore. The last peace talks was when it was kind of heavy for me at that point. I was sharing how like we were dealing with the demons of like Bud and I were dealing with the demons of our emotions, and it was heavy and constrictive. And then we went for that walk, and all of a sudden the environment, like I could see it, the big cloud, the heavy cloud, the winds, sitting on this balcony and watching how the elements speak. Because when we are in nature and we are in the elements and we are tuned into them, they too will speak and to us through our intuition. We are multidimensional beings. So the multidimensional, faculties are now coming online more than ever, which means we get an intuitive idea, something new is illuminated, and then we tune into nature, and nature will confirm or deny it. It typically will confirm. Actually, I take that back. If something is an intuitive nudge, nature will confirm it. You will get signs from the way the wind. You can ask a question and just allow the wind to give you the answers. They carry this data. The wind carries the data, the solar data. So this is going much deeper than maybe the mind can understand. But when you understand that the whole surrendering to the intuitive and the spiritual way, the mystical way of life, it starts to illuminate more and more opportunities. And we think of in the mind opportunities as a new job or a new place to live. And yes, a lot of that is starting to open up. More opportunities have come to, not more, but Bud and I have had a couple of opportunities in the last couple of days that have been illuminated that all of a sudden we're like, oh, we hadn't thought about that. And now we're taking action on it. And for you, this is where the real subtle parts of the expansion of your consciousness is starting to show up, and you're feeling something different. It might feel uncomfortable because it is different. And yet, when you tune into it, you've got to stop in those moments to be like, what is this? And when you do, you will be illuminated with new opportunities to fall into the ideal of vulnerability, of surrender. And this is, remember, October's theme is freedom. This is how we claim that freedom, by doing the scarier thing and being vulnerable and following the intuition, following the inner wisdom, following the guidance of our higher self, even when it doesn't make sense. Because it most likely is not going to make any sense, and it's going to be scary as hell. But it's only when it becomes an ideal that you start to that it becomes comfortable. But it doesn't become the ideal until you actually take the step into the vulnerable state. So we've been here, and then all of a sudden these solar waves come in, and now we're here. And there's just this rim of expansion that brings a completely new dimension of living. And it might be a little bit different from where you are. So opportunities may show up. I'll give you an example of this. Like I said on Sunday, or the last peace talks, like all of a sudden, like Bud and I were kind of like, ugh. Monday we woke up and it was just like, we could both breathe. We were friends again. And a friend of his, I think I've mentioned, we've decided that, we miss the boys, and living a dream of traveling and living in Europe really isn't a dream without the kids. So we are making arrangements to go back. Arrangements are not like, they're not logical arrangements. And because I don't want to do it logically, I want this to be a mystical, beautiful falling in. I want the elements, I want I want all parts of it just to fall into place and have it be easy and not have to figure it out. And that's why Bud and I have been kind of butting heads for the last couple of weeks, because he's like, babe, let's just book tickets, and then I'll get something on Airbnb, and then we find a place, and then we do this. And I'm like, that sounds awful. No. And he understands where I'm coming from, but yet he doesn't operate like that. And I understand how he operates, where he's coming from, but I don't want to do it that way. And all of a sudden on Monday, we felt like, okay, we're at peace with each other again. All right, we're going to see where we are today. And his friend in San Diego reached out, and they had been kind of talking about an opportunity there. And his friend said, but I really need you. Like, when's your date? When are you coming over? I really need you. And this is Bud's mentor. And Bud has always had a dream of working with him and for him. And he's offering, Bud to kind of help manage his business and not taking over, but managing the plumeria farms that he had. And we used to have a greenhouse in the back of our house in Austin, and Bud did really well. He was like the guy in Austin that supplied plumeria, and he did it for a really quick stint and found really fast success. And now he gets to do it on a bigger scale. So he's been antsy because he just wants to get there to get started. And all of a sudden, the illumination came from me, and I was like, honey, why don't you just go? Like, you go first, get things organized there. I'll stay here and keep working on my work. We have this place, and until for a couple more months. And you know what? He was like, why didn't we think about that? All of a sudden, he's like been packing up. He's got a plane ticket now. And you know what I'm most excited about, y'all? The space between, right? 2 days ago, I was talking about the space between is like this, like, there was space in between us because we had this frustration, but now there's going to be space between. We get to we get to move into a place where we get to appreciate each other again 24/7 for 2 years now. That I mean, we adore each other, but like we have gotten annoyed. The annoyances have kind of gotten in the way of the things that I appreciate the most. I am excited for the space between. It is very vulnerable for me because I adore my husband and we actually have a good time. We enjoy each other. But now what I know is he has to be filled up. He needs to feel this life force of creative energy again and to get his hands dirty. This is the best medicine for him. So if we have to step into the vulnerability of being away from each other for the first time since we've pretty much been together, then I'm willing to do it. We're stepping into a vulnerable place again. And there's some excitement in that, and there's some sadness in it. Because I don't know when, I don't know how I'm gonna get back there or what it's all gonna look like. But he is so happy, and it makes me so happy. So the ideals are being reinforced again. Vedette, it's time to be vulnerable. Vedette, it's time to take advantage of an opportunity. And you know what? I have been sitting here all day, and I said when I got on, the earth, like the elementals, are just confirming it. It's beautiful out. The sky's blue. The breeze is beautiful. My banana bread became just amazing. My world is reflecting all of it, which means it gives me the confirmation that all is well. I am being guided. We are being guided. And I share this personal, I try to share so vulnerably, simply because I want you to see how it shows up. We talk about energy, we talk about the mystical life, we talk about spiritual living, just as Ralph, what's it, I forget now the author I just read to you. His name's Ralph. Just as Ralph says, like spiritual living starts with just a nudge, the intuitive nudge. Illumination comes only when we step into that nudge. So for today, illumination of opportunities is really what we are looking for, because these opportunities are coming. They're showing up to give us freedom, to be able to step into the freedom. But we can't do that unless we let go of what the mind wants to say and let go of fear and step into the opportunity. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to let go of the logical excuses as to why it's not the right time to listen to your intuition? The faster you start doing it, that intuition, like that word has been overused, that we just kind of like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm intuitive. But are you? Ask yourself, are you? Are you taking the steps that are becoming illumined? Because this is how we start to reinforce the heaven on earth and anchor into that, by taking the steps, the pathway that's leading to that, which is the freedom we're talking about. Freedom of letting go of our fears and our densities, letting go of the old programming of the mind and stepping into something much greater, although it feels really uncomfortable because we're expanding. These solar energies are quickly accelerating. That was the acceleration of freedom. That what I meant by that on Sunday is being reinforced. Opportunities are starting to pop into an illumined thought or illumined idea now in your mind if you pay attention, if you're listening in peace. The peace is talking to you. It is taking you into freedom. I hear it already in my world, and I'm secure enough to sit here now after taking some really big leaps that made zero sense in this last year and a half to say it gets easier, and it is the way. It is the way. So whatever you're being called to do, if it feels hard, do it anyway. If it feels scary, do it anyway. Because if it's being illumined, it's for a reason. You are being guided by your team, by your angelic team, by your guides, your ancestors, whatever works for you, by God, whatever works for you. You are being guided, but it will only guide you in a direction that doesn't make sense because it won't take you to what you already know. It's going to take you into what you're here to learn. So trust this process. Trust it. Because, like I said, exactly a year ago, I was in such fear, such anxiety, such depression. I didn't know how I was going to breathe life into me. And it took my husband, it took me listening to him in my ear, being like, what are you going to do? You're just going to lay here because you've been talking about doing this work thing. Like, you're going to do it or not, And he does not communicate softly. And I had to just let go of how he communicated and be like, shoot, he's kind of right. And that's how the daily tune in started. That's how I got to fill myself back up. And that's how I got to really be illumined and looking at my pathway and being like, whoa, I was supposed to have space for my kids. I was supposed to be halfway across the world, so I couldn't get involved and I couldn't give myself an excuse to put my work on the back burner to take care of them. They're taking care of themselves, like they're doing good. And I had to get over my own ego saying they're doing good without you. And then I put that aside and then just said, what's next for me? What kind of work do I want to do? And this year has really helped me kind of guide my way. I went this way. Nope, that's not working. Nope, and here I am at Peace Talks. And in 2 hours from now, I get to pitch Peace Talks to a streaming platform to bring Peace Talks to another platform. You couldn't tell me that was going to happen when I was so depressed, barely able to video myself on a daily tune-in from last year. Y'all, trust this process. Be illumined. Allow yourself to take advantage of opportunities. They're all there for our highest and best good, for your highest and best good. I'm so grateful for this journey. It has not been easy, but we are here to be the models for those who are still in still enslaved in that old process. This is our time to be free. October is bringing us freedom, and we're going to be concentrating and really tuning into all the ways that all the ways that the meaning of freedom come in. This was today's. So, illumination of opportunity. Okay. How is the girl that came from Ukraine to Albania? I was just texting with her yesterday. That's a great question. I've had a few people ask me, so I'm going to answer. Christine she got here. She stayed with us for a couple of weeks, as I shared on the Daily Tune-In. She got a job within a month. Y'all, working Ukraine and Albania has shown me a whole different way of life. The people for season come here. They are paid $300, 300 euros a month with no days off, like literally no days off. And they work their butts off all through 4 or 5 months of season for 300 euros a month. She did that for a month and was like, but Dad, I can't do that. And I was like, nobody should. And in that 1 month, she was working at a restaurant. A gentleman came in. He was Ukrainian. They fell in love, and she quit the job after a month. And they went to Kosovo. They were there for a couple of months, and now she's in Montenegro, which is just north of here. And Montenegro is absolutely beautiful. And she's traveling around. And yet she's like, I'm kind of done with traveling. I want to go back to Ukraine. So after they've kind of got their feet um, they're after they've kind of run the course in Montenegro, they're going to head back to Ukraine. So we keep in touch. She's doing great. She fell in love. She's young, 19, following love wherever it takes her, and they're ready to go back to Ukraine, which she's super excited about. So we stay in touch, and that was such a great that was a great piece of the puzzle too. Like I found so many, not so many, but I found really good lifelong friends on this journey that I never would have known had I not done it too. So I think that's all. So that is the message for today, y'all. Thank you so much. If you're getting stuff from these peace talks, I actually am getting some good messages that I really, really appreciate. So if you would love to donate to the platform to keep the channel going, support my trip back to my boys, I would accept and be so grateful to accept donations. And at the very least, if you love Peace Talks, please share it with friends, share it on your social media, give me a like and subscribe to the channel. That's beautiful as well, and I appreciate it. So thank you all for being here. I will see you on the next Peace Talks. Mwah! Have a good one, everyone.